Welcome back to another episode of Under the Arch podcast. To my left, I've got Jas. I've got special guest Monique. But before that, I'm gonna play the role of a YouTuber for 1 second.
Oh Lord.
I'm gonna reprise my role as YouTuber in the movie YouTube and the Copyright Crisis.
This isn't even a thing, but okay, go on.
Bruv, don't ruin it. You've not seen the end of Tenet. I'm in there, bruv. I've watched it twice for a reason.
I haven't seen Tenet.
That's why you haven't seen me yet. Anyway.
Wow. Okay.
It's your birthday tomorrow officially.
Woo, woo, woo.
So there you go.
Smile.
Thank
you. Appreciate
We're
that.
meant to be sponsored by
sweet.
Conjure, but we're not yet. So
That's
you know
coming.
what?
That's
Elijah,
coming.
this is more favour for you, bruv.
Yeah, man.
Wearing the shirt. Want my money.
Yeah, I'm not wearing a shirt, but this is still warning number 2. Sponsorship thing. Soon come.
We've got Lara.
Returning
But
guest.
before she continues, we've had 2 podcasts with her, Entanglement and the Kanye discussion. And guess what? They're ending the show!
Keeping up with the Kardashians is ending, ladies and gentlemen.
21 seasons, 8
Thank
plus
you,
1
Kanye.
episode. Thank you, Kanye. But we're praying for you. But we're praying for you. We're
Of
praying
course,
for you.
of course, of
Seriously,
course,
we're
of
praying
course.
for you.
But then the show is fine.
It's such a good day, man.
I think they've had a good run.
Anyway.
Good. They had a run. They had a run.
No, we're not discussing this, bro. I've had my moment.
Okay.
Calm. And we've got long-time bro,
My G.
Zeeshan, my
Oh,
G.
my G.
He's been a teacher for 7 years, bruv.
Oh, man.
So yeah, it's a special time.
Yeah.
Let the people know I'm getting entangled as well soon.
Hey!
Come on, my G. Oh, man, I'm looking forward to that.
I wanted to get married in
Congratulations.
August just so I could say
Hey man. Just make sure there's no extra people in the scene, bruv. Just keep it between you and your partner, man. Keep it safe.
And don't
I
play
know I
it.
can play that card if I need to. Joking.
Joking, of course.
Yeah, man. No comments.
There you go.
But today we're gonna have a different kind of discussion.
Oh, for sure.
Recently, we've obviously been dealing with COVID this year, but within that, there was a lot of stuff with the education sector. Our brilliant government managed to mess up the exam results.
Yep.
So we're going to discuss that as well as how teaching's been for the students, for the teachers, and for just parents and people in general, and what the education sector may look like going forward and stuff. So in terms of a background, in regards to what happened with the exam results, the government changed how they do the grading due to them not having any exams. They had this system of standardization, which just went completely belly up, and seemed to favour, I think, private schools more than public schools due to the number of students in the class. Right. So the first thing I'll kind of ask is, based off the kind of the fallout, Zeeshan, what did you see, Zeeshan, Monique, Lara, like discuss from like either mental health and also students as well? Like, what did you see from the students and then kind of the parents' response to the initial, the 1 week of, or the weekend of craziness?
Yeah.
I just thought it was crazy. Like the stress that these kids were already under. And then to put them through all of that as well, where you have a week where your whole next decade of your life is up in the air.
Right. Yeah.
And even when they only did the right thing because people put pressure on them.
Exactly.
Basically. So
Yeah.
if that pressure hadn't been put, people would have to accept what they are. And that shows the importance of having to speak out as well.
Yeah.
Injustices, which I think a lot of people realise. And I think they just threw people under the bus.
Yeah.
Even when the grades were changed, some people now have to rethink their future.
Yeah.
So it's not a perfect situation.
No.
But the thing is, why say go with teachers' predicted grades and why change that without letting people know?
Well, they had this weird, it's a weird system.
Yeah.
And I don't understand it either.
I
I guess
still
they
don't
didn't
understand
want, overinflation of the grades. But at the same time, the system they used was so heavily skewed
It
towards
went all
one
the way the
side.
other way.
Well, because after 15 students, it didn't matter what the predicted grade was. They just went with your school history.
Exactly, yeah.
So it just backfired all the way.
Sense.
Monique, what's your...
Yeah, so in regards to mental health, it really did, really did affect students. They were already worried about coming back to school and then having to deal with the pandemic and then exam results. It just increased their anxiety levels a lot. And a lot of students were struggling with depression as well. And it just wasn't really a good situation for them. It was very tough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Lara, in terms of with your app Tally, you focus on, I guess, 18 plus.
Right.
So with, I guess, the A-level results coming out and
Yeah.
being changed and stuff, we've seen that they lifted the uni cap, but that means a lot of people had to go through clearing, they had to go for courses, and a lot of courses are now gone. Do you think there'll be like a question mark for students over like their performance and because they didn't take an exam?
Yeah, I think I was just able to like empathize from like being a student, an A-level student myself. Like, I did quite bad during my A-levels, and I was in control. I got the ability to take an exam. You know that feeling after you take an exam and you know that, oh, I flopped that one, I got that one.
Yeah.
You're a bit sure about what's going to come out.
You're asking for the answers, you know you messed up.
But then actually imagine not having that feeling and not being in control, and then being in a pandemic, and then
100%.
it's kind of like, and then taking the school history as basically a map for everyone else. It's mad because I grew up in an environment, or I grew up like in a council estate kind of area where I was trying my best to make good grades, right? So if that power was taken away from me, and in terms of like education for so many is like a social climber. It gives you the ability to climb the social ladder.
Right.
So that's like a lot of people's dreams like just dashed away.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
it was interesting.
Zeeshan, as a teacher, how did you feel dealing with that, and what did you kind of hear from the parents during that situation? Because it wasn't
so the week the grades came out, we were under the impression until the day before because it was the A-levels that came out first.
Yeah, they always come out a week before.
And that was a Thursday.
Yes.
So up until Wednesday, even the head teacher of the school that I work at, he did not know that the government was changing how the grades are going to be given.
Yeah.
So he sent all staff an email containing the grades that us teachers predicted.
Yes.
And then he sent one with the algorithm. Now, on the spreadsheet that was contained there, it was coloured in yellow if the government had lowered it for what the kid was originally predicted, and purple if they had raised it. I went across the whole spreadsheet of like 150 year 13 students, there was about 3 grades coloured in purple.
Wow.
And the rest of it was yellow. Like 50% of the grades got downgraded by the algorithm.
That's insane.
Wow.
So how do you go about explaining that to the parents?
Yeah.
You just put your hand up and say it's out of our hands.
How did you feel as a teacher as well?
The thing is, I didn't have a year 13 class this year, so it didn't directly affect me. But I just thought, like, how, if your life is, for example, you've planned to go on to medicine right now, how do you convince yourself that I can wait another year and it's going to be okay?
Yeah.
When it might even be worse in terms of the climate of applying then.
Especially because you've not got the typical gap year set up.
Yeah.
Exactly.
There was no right way to fix this. As soon as they said no exams, they made the mistake because they didn't think where we were going to be.
Yeah.
And they could, if they knew we were coming back at this stage, they could have delayed uni and said, let's do exams later in September or shorten the summer holidays.
I think so.
So they jumped the gun first. That was the first mistake.
Yeah.
They had no idea of what they were going to do in terms of decisions. So they were flip-flopping between strategies.
Yeah.
And then they left the kids in limbo, which always happens. Every decision that this government makes is to the detriment of the kids rather than to their benefit.
That's what's so shocking to me, because when I think about it, you realise a lot of these kids, it's tough being an adult looking at it from the outside, because for us, we can say, it's very easy for us to say, oh, 2020 is a write-off. Like, we'll get...
Speak for yourself, bro.
No. I mean from the standpoint of, we'll make it through this year. Life will be difficult, but we'll see 2021, and then we can sort of continue. For these kids where it's in this weird situation where they're progressing year by year, they can't have a year write-off. It's just such a weird situation to be in, because you lose a year, you don't know what impact that will have on you. There's so many unknowns, and I think for me, I really empathize on the anxiety part of it, because like, imagine the mental things that are going through your mind where it's like, my entire life has been altered because of this thing I had no control over.
Yeah.
That's what I really empathize with.
And some parents didn't really know how to navigate it either, because they were surprised by COVID-19, and then some of them lost their jobs as well. It was just a hard time for adults as well as children and young people. I just think everybody struggled in some way, due to the pandemic, really. And then, you have the government who don't really know how to go about with things. They're still working at it as they go along, which I think is another
That's another
From
issue.
my
Another
itself.
perspective,
Yeah.
I thought like there are actually ways to have like exams online as well.
Well,
Like,
unis
yeah.
did that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Unis
you
found a
need
way.
to go.
Yeah, they did
So
do
I
that,
don't
yeah.
know why they couldn't put that. Is it Ofqual that's in charge of qualifications? I don't know
Yeah,
why.
it was off call. Yeah,
Yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm doing an AWS qualification like later this month, and the camera actually stays on to basically see if you're like
Yeah.
looking at things.
Yeah.
They could have
Aha.
easily put a technology
Yeah.
like.
It's I
That's
can
true.
answer that question for you. It's the
Yeah, go on.
timing of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So they go through a whole process to make the exams. Now they would have made the exams with no idea of the pandemic coming.
Yes.
As soon as the pandemic hit, there's like it depends on what subject you're doing. If it's like a graph question or you've got to
Yeah.
measure something on a piece of paper, they've now got to take out certain questions based on the fact that you're doing it online.
Yeah.
And by the time the pandemic hit, it was those exams are certified. They're in
Yeah.
the plastic packaging.
Yeah, I
So
mean,
they
it was
couldn't
March.
change it
yeah.
last minute. That was
Yeah.
the issue. Or if they did, they would need a lot more time
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, why didn't they do that?
because
though?
they said no exam straight away and they shot
Yeah.
themselves in the
Yeah,
foot.
exactly,
So
exactly.
there's
Yeah.
no strategy. They say things and then they don't actually think about it. The worst thing about our government is not that they don't know how to handle it. It's that they don't admit that they don't know how to handle it.
Yeah, 'cause
Yeah.
They want to
yeah.
give everyone the impression that
Yeah.
they
That
know
they
what they're
have
doing
control.
when everyone knows.
It's chaos, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. But then in some countries, like for example Nigeria, they still had to do exams regardless of the situation. So I think, yeah, I agree with you. I think there are ways of how they could have handled it, but because they said no exams straight away, it was like, okay, well then, no
I
exams.
mean,
then.
the government could have changed their mind. They backpedaled on everything, so they could have changed their minds. It's
yeah.
just they didn't want to
Yeah.
look weak.
One
in
minute,
that
one minute. So when did they say no exams?
Like
Because-
March, like right at the start
Right
of
at
the
the-
pandemic.
yeah.
We
So-
were just fresh in lockdown, weren't
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm asking because I graduated this year and I had to take an exam.
But you were in uni, so
Okay.
it doesn't affect you.
So on uni, it was just like a separate thing. Like
Well,
to each
uni
their
was to
own
finish
type
the
of thing?
course. Yeah. Because uni doesn't come under the government has their grading system, but it doesn't. It's not managed that way.
Right.
It's a level-
Uni is quite internal.
When
Yeah.
while the other ones are
Yeah,
quite
so
external.
yeah, because
He made that because it was like a where were you when this happened?
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
moment.
yeah.
As soon as I saw him say no exams and we'll release more details later, I knew there were no more details to bring.
You know.
And I was like, he screwed this up totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you could have just waited it out and saw what happened.
Exactly.
Let the
yeah.
R number come down and sit
Yeah.
exams. It could have happened. And these
Exactly.
could have been in uni now.
Yeah.
But
But the
Yeah.
thing is, I think the government could have changed their minds, but the government don't want to admit that they're wrong.
yeah,
So
No, never
it
that.
that's the main
and
issue.
that's the main
yeah.
issue.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, you have to just come out of Boris did then have to deal with COVID himself like 2 weeks later. So
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
so once he made his mind
Yeah.
up, nothing for a month, nothing happened.
Yeah.
Like it was like everyone was waiting on Boris.
Yeah.
So
I mean, even when the grades come out, they ask Boris, what do you think of these grades? And he just says generic stuff that has no. He goes, he called it a robust set of grades.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't even
I read
mean
that, so I was
anything.
like, what does
What
that
all does that mean?
Literally nothing. You could say robust for anything.
My guys just saying words. Oh,
But
wow.
the thing with Boris was if he's not got his three-step
Oh,
acronym,
yeah.
he's useless. He's actually useless, man.
But I think with Boris, he's just in a different world completely. Like, I
Yeah.
don't think he grew up, like, for example, in a council estate, for example.
Oh, no,
he never
definitely,
had that
definitely.
lifestyle. So his lifestyle is completely different. He doesn't even care. I mean, at the end of the day, the private schools were the ones that were doing really well.
Yeah.
So
Because they benefit from the system.
exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
from the system.
Yeah. So his kids will be okay, put it that way.
Wow. But nah, that's
They asked Matt Hancock about how many black people are there in your cabinet, and he couldn't answer the question directly. The
No.
answer was there was one, but we got rid of him. That was
Yo.
hey.
That's
and it's to a point where these real life politicians are actually funnier than the memes. And that's
Honestly, yo, it's actually like
it's
I mean,
scary.
it's
It's scary.
it's so funny that that's the situation we're in now, where there's no respectful people in like positions of power. It's just like I'm just waiting to say something funny. Like I
Yeah.
tune into Boris's little press conferences or whatever.
He's stand-up comedian show.
like yo, mum, get the popcorn. We're gonna have a good laugh. What's he gonna say?
But,
Yeah.
to kind of piggyback off Monique's point about like the council estate, that was kind of my next question. So in terms of educating and providing support to students during the pandemic, did you see an impact on like the ability for students to learn based on like working class sometimes or like race or like disability or like did you see an issue like an impact on based on the school, private school, public school. I went to a private school and a public school for secondary school. I was 2 and a bit years in a private school, which I say they're a little bit longer.
Yeah.
A little bit longer. It's a little bit longer.
You came and joined us.
It's a hell of a public school.
The thing is, I was originally meant to join that school. I was originally meant to join it, but last minute changed her mind, didn't it? My mum changed her mind. I didn't change my mind for nothing. I was there 2 and a bit years. Life was interesting.
And then you came to our school and got boxed in first.
The setup. The setup.
Oh,
Nah. You can't give me that statement. Oh, man. No, explain the setup. Go on.
Can I go into it?
Yeah, make it up. You got a minute.
Don't you know the first rule of Fight Club?
You're not
useless guy,
My
bro.
bad.
The first rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club. The second rule of Fight Club is you do not talk about Fight Club.
Bro,
I see it?
useless guy,
See,
bro.
if our government said that, we'd be better off. That's it.
Like he lose 13 times being basketball
Listen,
in 1 year,
man.
bro. Get out of here, bro. Get out of here. Still undefeated.
Only because we haven't played now, but that's besides.
13 years later, still undefeated.
I'm gonna hit you, bro.
Join the club.
Oh,
But
wow.
nah, so based on like the support, did you see an impact on students based on those 3 factors? Did you see like students struggle to learn or to deal with the situation? And what were some of like the issues from the teaching point of view? Because it's the first time you had to ever teach like that long term. And then parents as well.
For, I think, the people who have lower incomes, for example, they struggled a lot. And even returning back to school, I think there was a campaign actually about free school meals or something. Where they were thinking of taking it off so people wouldn't be able to get free school meals anymore. So it's a lot of the poor backgrounds are the ones that are suffering the most. And I guess we live in a world where, you know, it's run by the Conservatives now, and they only care for really the rich, sorry, and the people who, you know, own businesses. So I think in saying that, it was more of the poorer backgrounds that suffered the most. And even within my school, we had a rota where we would go to students who were from poor backgrounds, houses, and just check if they were okay, give them food if they needed to, and just support them during the pandemic. But for example, the Black kids and the Asian kids, they also struggled as well. And I think the people from the privileged backgrounds were the ones that were pretty much okay. And they managed to survive regardless of the situation. So I think it was a lot of the poor backgrounds who really struggled during this time.
Zeeshan, as a teacher, how was it for you?
I mean, I've got a year 13 form class this year, so the year 12 last year, and they're quite usually independent, where I'll ask them something and they won't give anything away. But we were just talking the other day about how did the pandemic affect you, and you don't realise how hard it is for some of them. Like, people think it's just time off school, but like one girl goes, she had to share one computer between 3 siblings. Another girl had to do, I don't know if you heard of Google Classroom, where you it's like online as best you can, but she didn't even have access to a computer, so she was doing everything through her phone. To a point where she just can't submit some stuff, and we as teachers we can't chase them up because you don't know what their situation is going to be. And I just think it was really, really unfortunate for the ones who don't see it as a holiday and really want to prosper in their education. They're just being held back. And it's the issue is the financial divide. Where they don't have the money, and then they're the ones who do have money are at a privilege. And going to your point about the government, I think that's so important, where we say the Conservatives only care about the rich. I think that's true. I think they don't know any different.
Yeah.
If there was people from different backgrounds in the cabinet that could give them an idea of what's going on, like they only responded to free school meals because Marcus Rashford thought,
That's actually
Exactly.
because they
if he
rejected it
hadn't
the
said
first
that,
time.
would anything have
Exactly.
changed?
Yo, they rejected it the first time. It was only because Rashford came and made his point.
So people from our communities that get to a certain point, they need to reach back and help pull
They have
people
to,
out.
yeah.
I think that's so important.
Absolutely.
And you know, to add on to the point you mentioned previously about speaking out, it's just really important for people to speak out about anything that they're struggling with, because that's the only thing that seems to be, you know, getting somewhere. Put it that way. So so for example, free school meals, they put that back on now because someone spoke out about it, and then the exams as well, because someone spoke up about it, they've changed the system. So it, you know, just to put it out there, it's very, very important to speak out. If there is something that you're struggling with, you need to say it, and not just allow the government to just make the decision and then just leave it, basically.
It's also important people that have a platform. Because that's where you can make the most.
Yeah,
You have to utilize it.
exactly.
For sure.
Yeah,
I think the social media era where we're kind of living in a time where you can't hide anything.
Yeah.
The second you say something or type something and it's out there,
It's there
like
forever,
people will pick away at it. And I love like the whole Me Too movement, the Black Lives Matter, everything came from, and I think a lot of that came from because people stopped their daily lives, busyness,
Yeah, I
and
agree
they
with
actually
that
sat down
completely,
to
yeah.
think what's going on. And where those grades came out, the way people on social media broke it down statistically to show that private school got disadvantaged, whereas these people got disadvantaged. That's the power of social media.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great time.
Well, that's when it's used correctly, it can be a beautiful thing to watch. It can be a beautiful thing to watch because it's like it shortens the world, so everyone's in like one place and everyone's opinions can just be flowing together.
And you catch liars out as well. Like
Yes,
the
so
politics,
easily.
you catch them out so quickly.
so
'cause they'll be
easily,
saying something, you'll be like, hold on, this video, time
That is
stamp,
not
17th July, you said this.
Man,
that's so true. Yeah, I've seen that a lot on Twitter, where they go through someone's Twitter account and
like they just like someone making some statement or something. Someone just reposts something that they said a while ago. Is this you?
Yeah,
that one is dangerous, fam.
That's a dangerous
It
one.
also makes people quite conscious because I'm like,
Definitely.
every time I'm tweeting, I'm always like, okay,
Yeah.
is this? Is that? Is
Yeah.
that okay?
Yeah.
In 10 years' time, I won't be ashamed of that.
Yeah.
tweet.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Think
All I
before
know
you
is
speak.
Twitter's
Yeah.
been deactivated for me, fam. It's been gone for a reason. I want no stress later.
Especially like with political correctness, in the next 10
Oh, for
years,
sure.
something that we're saying or
Yeah.
something you might be, have a certain opinion to it now could be seen as or frowned upon.
Yeah.
Well, we've had that happen.
Yeah,
It's happened the last
Several
10
times.
years. Yeah,
Yeah,
like the
and
world.
it continues.
Well, the world changed dramatically in 5 years ago. Because 5 years, you get away with whatever you wanted. Almost get away with whatever you wanted. Now it's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna
The
run this
slightest thing
statement
they're on
back.
your
Run this
they're on
statement
your-
back. Run that statement back. It's
Yep.
just the whole thing. So
But there's nothing wrong with accepting you're wrong when you make a mistake. It's when you carry on in that direction
Yeah.
to say either I'm right or I'm not going to admit I'm
But
wrong.
that's a different chat.
That's what
about-
rubs people the
That's
wrong
a
way.
different chat about council culture, though.
Yeah.
That's the
I have a whole
yeah.
different chat and conversation because that's where it gets a bit sticky.
Yeah.
But I do want to go to my third point, which is returning to school in September.
Yep.
So, we're in groups of 6 as of this video. Who knows what will be at the end of it. But schools are back.
Yay!
You can tell by the enthusiasm. How we feel about this.
So, first, I'm going to ask, like, as people who work in schools, as working with students, young adults, what are your thoughts on having to return to work in the office?
During a pandemic.
I'm working from home. I'm good.
Same here.
I'm good. Like, I'm good. I can have lunch when I want, breakfast when I want, dinner when I want. I'm good. But you're back in school. So how has it been for you? Because I know there's teachers that don't want to return
Yeah.
to work. People that don't want to return to schools. But have to. There's students that would prefer not to return to school, but they have to.
Yeah.
How has it been returning and having to deal with that? Personally, how do you feel about returning to school? And secondly, how have you seen from the students?
I think personally, I'm quite happy to return back. I think there's good sides and bad sides. I think for the students, it's good to interact with other students because the students that I've spoken to, they haven't seen their friends in 6 months.
That's a big part.
So yeah. So I think it's beneficial for the students, and that it really does help them to interact with others, see their friends again, which I think is good. But then the other side to it is COVID-19 is still around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's still quite risky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, my school has been great. They've given us PPE.
What exactly have they given you?
So masks, a shield,
Okay.
hand sanitizer, loads of it, and that's about it. Yeah.
So if you own a hand sanitizer or soap company, you're rich this year. I want 10% of your money for it. You made it big this year.
Oh, wow.
You made it big this year. Oh, man.
Yeah. And I mean, the schools, they're saying that we have to keep our social distance. We can't walk around the classroom. We have to stay right at the front, which I think is quite hard sometimes. I don't know how it is for you.
They give them everything you're saying is the same, but it's like you get to choose for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you mean you have to
As
choose?
in, they give us a choice whether we want to or want to not wear a mask. As teachers, not as students. Because the idea is you protect the teacher, because it sounds really bad to say, but the teachers are more valuable than the students. So students, first of all, are younger, so generally it affects them less. Secondly, if a student goes out, the lesson goes on. If a teacher goes out, it shuts down.
Anarchy, yeah.
So it's more like we don't collect in homework anymore because they take that home, and
Yes.
the COVID could be in their house, and they
Yeah.
bring it back. So
Aha,
everything's marked. Do you see
okay.
what I mean?
Wow, they are going to extremes.
Yeah.
They're doing everything they can, but then, like, if the virus is there and it's in the school, depends how early you find it.
Yeah, this thing is so weird because I feel like, for me, the preventative measures that Monique outlined, I'm like, 1 minute, is that all? Like, for me, but then now what you said about the homework thing, I'm like, okay, so they actually are taking practical, like, intelligent steps to try and keep more at-risk people safe. So I do respect that, but I feel like when you're dealing with such an unknown and vague situation, it's hard to put things into place to really make sure that everyone's as protected as they need to be. That's my problem with this entire thing right now.
Yeah.
It's very weird.
It's very risky. And then, the government is changing the rules again. So you can't be around with more than groups of 6 people.
Yeah.
But then people are saying, well, schools are open and you have like loads of students there. So, and then, you're going back to work and then you're on the tube as well. There's just more than 6 people. So, yeah, it's still risky to be back.
Yeah.
But the school's doing everything they can to ensure that we're safe. And that's it, really. That's all they can do. That is all they can do, really.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question as well, from your perspective in terms of the role you do in school? Do you feel you were able to have as much of an effect while they were in lockdown and doing it via Zoom? Did you do it via Zoom?
No, not via Zoom.
Do you think it could be as effective if you had carried it on via Zoom as you do when you're in person?
Yeah, I think it would have been great, actually, if we could do it via Zoom or even Microsoft Teams. Because at least they can see my face and I can see their face. But I think the school was a bit skeptical of that because of the safeguarding issues. And some students will be a little bit immature and record the sessions, but it's supposed to be quite personal. Yeah.
You've seen enough of that already.
Yeah,
Do you think we need to probably look into that if there is a second lockdown?
Yeah. I think that
100%.
would be really, really good. And even some of my students have mentioned that as well. They really are advocating for that. Let's make it on Zoom. Let's make it on Microsoft Teams so that I can see your face, you can see me. And I think sometimes with some of the students, because I was doing telephone counselling, for some of the students, they lie. So they say, oh, yeah, I'm fine. But then you can always tell by their face that something is not right. So, it would have been beneficial to do it by Zoom, and that would have been really, really good. Especially if there is a second pandemic or second wave, which is probably more than likely.
I mean, we're probably in the middle of it now, if I'm being honest.
Could be.
That would be really good,
I was just saying earlier that I feel like it's important that mental health is kind of put into the curriculum.
Yes.
Because I can see, and one of the things we do at Talley, like, in terms of like we do tally talks, which is like a period where everyone can speak anonymously. And I think like things like that, or like exercises like write a letter to your mum about how you felt, or paint something. If there's actually like a class or a set time where students are just focusing on their mental health, you can actually get a lot more than just asking a kid, how are you doing? How are you doing is so vague. Like, I'm fine. That's what everyone says.
Exactly. Exactly. The school, you know, my school that I work at has been really good, and they've set mental health as a priority for the first week. So we only started on Monday.
Right.
We had teachers training day for 3 days, which was different. But the first week when the students returned back, the whole week was prioritized on mental health. So I was doing a lot of presentations on mental health, and just, you know, ensuring that students were okay. Because after being away for 6 months, it's difficult. So yeah, the school was really, really great in doing that. Yeah, prioritizing for mental health.
I respect that. I respect that. I think you kind of talked and discussed it quite well. So I kind of go into the final point, which you've mentioned actually. The second wave and lockdown. So as of now, as of this recording, they've cut the numbers to 6, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But everything's still open. So you can go to the pub in groups of 6.
Yep.
And
Quick question. 1 minute. Why 6?
I've asked this question. No one can answer it for me.
Yeah.
No one can answer.
Like, did they just say, like, how? Like, was there a conference or a conversation?
Because COVID looks at the numbers and makes sense.
It doesn't, though. I mean,
It does. It must do.
No, it mustn't. Because I want to know how they came to the conclusion that 6 is was Boris just there like, you know what? I think we should have 6. It's like, 1 minute, why 6? 6 is not preventing Jack.
It doesn't affect families that are
More than 6.
Yeah, it doesn't affect them. It just means they can't have anyone else come over.
Oh, right, okay. That's one question I was asking. I was like, what if you have like 7 children? You like say, stay over there.
Well, the thing is,
if you leave pubs open and you're a group of 6 and there's 6 other groups of 6s there,
you see
if
what I'm saying?
If you're going to limit it to 6, we need to go back. Not that I'm saying I want to go back to that in terms of how difficult it was, but you can't leave social areas open and then and you can't tell people to eat out, help out, discount vouchers. Then you're telling the country they're overweight. Then you're telling them they need to lose weight or do more extra. Like, the messages are so mixed.
They're so mixed and so dumb,
vague and confusing.
And moreover, how do they plan to enforce this 6 rule? Like, please don't tell me you're expecting UK police to look at a group and be able to do math and count 6 people. Because I mean, you're asking a bit much. I mean, I've seen police training.
Well, they come in 30, so it's fine.
Yeah, I see what you mean. 6 is a random number.
It's a very random number.
You know, I don't know why they even came up with 6. It could have been 4, it could have been 3, but they said 6. I don't know. But I think maybe it's because it's a bigger group, maybe. And I know the young people in particular was hanging out in big groups of like 14.
But because they increased the number to 30, that's why they went up. That's why people hang out in big groups. Lara, what are your thoughts?
I just kind of think that the UK hasn't been very strict with the COVID-19.
No.
And the reason why we have a second wave is the government's fault.
Yeah,
like
100%.
if we were strict with it, as we've seen some other nations do, I don't think there'll be a second wave.
Absolutely, yeah.
I agree.
I think we need to remember that. And I tell all the kids in that year 11, 12, 13 age group, don't forget what this government did to you. Because the next election that comes around, they're going to be eligible to vote.
That's important.
So people in this country, they forgive too easily. They have a short memory. Hold a grudge.
It's the short memory. I don't think that.
There's going to come a day where we're out of this pandemic and life gets back to normal. People will be more appreciative. Don't forget what they did.
Yeah.
Because they need to be held accountable.
You need to hold on to that for sure.
That's interesting.
That's true. What are your thoughts, bro? Because you did uni during this pandemic, and obviously you're not gonna have to deal with that anymore.
Well, I mean, for me, my experience was a very different one because I didn't really understand what happened. So how they did things on my end was basically, like I said, I had to do certain exams from home. And then I found out that essentially all of our grades got reduced because certain modules were based on attendance. And because no one was attending, they just decided, yes. So I was meant to get
Welcome to COVID, folks.
So I was on track to get a first. and because of the attendance taken away from everything, one module that I did where I got 2 firsts for my assignments, I ended up getting a second class because not second class, a 2-1,
2-1, yeah.
a 2-1 because attendance was worth like 30% or something.
That's
So
wild.
they just chopped that off.
Like I'm
Wow.
kind of flabbergasted by that, because it's like there's so much technology out there that they could have used to replace the attendance. Like even the thing with the exam, like it doesn't take time. It takes money to like basically employ people, engineers that can get things together, business analysts.
Yeah.
It could have been done. Why are we not doing? Why are we acting like we're what's it called? Like a country in the third world?
Prehistoric time.
Yeah, like.
Well, I mean, the problem that I experienced anyway was that all year we were dealing with this new system where you had to use an app to register in, and the app was broken most of the year.
Oh, wow.
So regardless, everyone wasn't getting marked for their attendance. So I don't know anyone personally who ended up with a first class. Wow. Everyone got like 2-1s, like 2-2s, like just worse and worse. So I saw like the immediate impact that it had on us who were graduating that year. The people I'm worried about are the people like the second years, the people who are about to enter their final year, which will now set them up for adult life. Because when you see them, it's like, what circumstances am I going to be working with? Like, how are exams going to work? I know someone who's in second year who is living with a bunch of people in third year who have now left and gone on to start their adult lives. Now she is by herself in accommodation. It's like, okay, how's that going to impact you? There's so much going on.
Yeah.
So I think that's, again, as someone who's just left it, my concern is more with the people who are still stuck in it and how this is going to affect them in the future. It comes to your point. When we return back to normalcy, you can't forget what's happened.
Yeah.
You can't forget.
I wanted to. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. So.
I want to just bring your attention to like a little short story that I have from before we went into lockdown. You know, like when you're an experienced teacher and other people come in and teach your class for X amount of weeks, and you sit at the back and you kind of don't do anything except watch. Now I'm in a high achieving school where majority of them are going off to Oxford and Cambridge. So I'm just doing my own thing and listening to what the kids are saying. And this is before lockdown, so life is normal. I hear this girl go, so and so teacher went off to Cambridge and ended up back here. I'm so disappointed in him. And that I've never forgotten that, and I'm next time I see you, I'm going to address this point with her. I've been waiting 6 months to have that conversation. But my point is, if you remember when we were in lockdown, did anyone care about nurses and healthcare workers? Only when we needed them, they start clapping for them. Do you see what I mean? And now when we come back to school and parents have been homeschooling and struggling to get the point across to them, I think we're in a new era where people who actually matter, like how do you get to who helps you get to Cambridge? Like that teacher who went off to Cambridge and came back, he's doing for these kids what someone did for him. So why do we constantly put down the people that matter most? Do you see what I mean?
Right.
And in our country, we don't value education. Like there was a statistic I read 2 years ago where there was 3 times the number of applicants to Love Island than there was to Oxford and Cambridge, because it makes you more money.
Right.
We don't value education.
It's the short term.
We don't value education.
Microwave success, yeah, sure.
Well, you know what? That's the thing with that is. So I know people that have gone to Oxford and Cambridge. I think we all do.
Yeah.
But it's always seemed unattainable at points. Brunel, like what's the other LSE and Imperial have always seen a bit more attainable because they haven't got this, I guess, element of class.
Right.
And it's not always true because I've seen people do it who, in theory, shouldn't have been there, right? Like, we will have mates who kind of, you think overachieved, but really gets worked hard. So I think in terms of the Love Island to Oxbridge, I'm just hoping that there's a chance where, due to this pandemic, the class thing kind of gets broken out a little bit, or like the sense of entitlement that people have. Because as we saw with the grade, the marking, that is still very much part of the system with the grade, the exam, because they built a system that was never going to help the kids who were in bigger classrooms, which are more like in public schools, because private schools are smaller for a reason. So,
sorry, carry on.
No, say your piece.
I bring up that example of that because Oxford and Cambridge doesn't mean that's where life starts and ends, and if you don't go there, you're a failure. But no one values the long 5-10 year grind, which is going to get you to a point where you're making the same money. Everyone wants to be a TikTok or an Instagram or social media influencer, which you have your 15 minutes of fame, but then where do you go? Do you see what I mean?
Yeah, we had or you had this chat with someone we had on recently for an interview, and
Yeah.
he was talking about how people think you're over if you don't ever made it by 30.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point in your life is 30? Like,
Yeah, it's the perspective that the people who are saying you're old and you're 30, you're a couple hundred days away from being in that exact same spot, so relax. It's not a long way away. Sure, it's years, but in perspective, it's a couple hundred days, sure. So
we have our own path as well. Someone that's successful at 16, we're not racing. We're all on our own path.
Yeah,
but nobody, and then from the school, the reason why I switched schools as well is because I want to be with more academically elite people who value education. But I've worked for so long with kids who don't care about education because they've been raised that way. To a point where they don't know any different because school doesn't mean anything to them except they come through the gates in the morning and they just count the hours until they leave. And for the longest time, the school that we went to, the mentality was pretty much the same. Why are you in school? Why are we going to learn this? What's the point of this?
Well,
Do you need
teachers.
Pythagoras' theorem? No, but you need the mentality and the routine and the ability to learn how to learn. Because at some point there's going to be information on a piece of paper or in a book that you're going to have to absorb and go and apply. But people don't value that.
No.
And that statement hit me hard about coming back here. Like, I've worked 7 years to get into this school, and that's what an academically elite girl thinks of someone who works here. And I'm sure there's probably a different meaning to what she said, but
the statement,
the statement,
it speaks for itself.
Yeah, nah, that's dark. Because, as you said, in the school we went to, like, you had teachers who didn't give a toss about how you're
We'd
being
expect it in a school like that, wouldn't you?
you
Not
expect-
where you're meant to be going to Oxford and Cambridge, something like that.
Yeah,
That's
literally.
the shocking part.
Yeah. So it's kind of weird, and I think that statement itself is probably.
But
It's scary when it's hit the lower generation, though. It's when it hit the younger generation. It's scary when it hits them because like now you have to unteach that to a whole new group of people, and it's like, oh, here we go again. Under 20 years.
But in the long term, a lot of good will come out of lockdown and COVID, where it's brought us back to basics and appreciate family and your parents, and they might not be around forever, and your loved ones, and just cherish the moment and the people.
Yeah. I kind of think that there's some good in, not obviously about the statement, but I think there's some good with the fact that universities such as, or going to universities such as Oxford and Cambridge is not seen as the pinnacle anymore. I think TikTok and Instagram and all influencing, as much as we see it, is a lot more attainable than the way we used to see, or I used to see Oxford and Cambridge.
Define attainable.
And it means that attainable in the sense that when you look at class, for example, right? When you look at, you don't have to be, it doesn't have to be based on your academics, right? Even if we look at what they did with the results, that independent schools are getting the better grades, it means that if a kid from, like me, coming from a council estate, right, if I didn't get the top, the top tutors or the extra teaching or the private school, I can decide to save up my money, buy a camera and become an influencer, and I still feel like I can make it. So, I know I think it's a double-edged sword in a way.
Monique, what are final thoughts in terms of what would you advise students and parents and fellow people working in education if there is a second lockdown? What would you advise them to do?
I would advise them to make sure you're mentally healthy, and what that means is setting time for yourself. I think lockdown has been quite suffocating for some people.
Sure.
Being around with families and just stuck there, you can't move anywhere. So I recommend going out for walks if you can, and just getting some exercise, spending some time with yourself. Even if that means if you're sharing a room, you can go in a bathroom, even for a parent as well, and just have that alone time with yourself. I think that's really, really important. And just, making sure that you are, speaking to people. There are ways where you can speak to people. We've got technology. Technology is great when it's used in the right way, like you said. So, you've got video call, FaceTime, whatever you want to call it. So you can speak to people if you need to. There are also mental health services out there, such as Childline, Samaritans, Young Minds. There's other services out there that are available 24/7. And if you need help, you can reach out to them and they're always available to speak to you.
Cool. Zeeshan, any words of wisdom?
Pretty much the same. Take it day at a time. Don't bottle things up. Ask for help, and just spend time with all the people that mean as much to you as possible. Because tomorrow's not guaranteed.
That's true. Lara, any words of wisdom?
I think they said it all. Like really, prioritize your mental health, and actually, I think you should also build a support system. Look for the people around you where whenever you're feeling down, you can speak to. And speaking out and just venting can basically be life-changing. I know, was it yesterday or 2 days ago was Suicide Prevention Day. And I know in the next coming months, there would be a spike. There's already a spike in terms of suicides and stuff like that. And young people, with just the things we've just mentioned and the stories you two have just spoken about with what young people might be going through and have gone through, I can really empathize, and I just feel like young people need their mental health to be prioritized a lot more. So it's calling out to the government, calling out to the schools to do more.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone, because it's actually been, you've handled quite a heavy topic well, so it's I appreciate
Let's
you.
wrap it up, Dan.
Yeah.
I always wanted to say that.